First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'Hashem, Yahushai Ba'Hashem, Rakak Radash. Yahweh is to this world ignorantly calls God. Yahushai is to this world ignorantly calls Jesus. Ba'Hashem means in the name, Rakah means spirit, and Kodash means holy. And that's on the Paleo Hebrew. I also want to give double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Today's lesson, I'm not sure what I'm going to title it, but I wanted to go into the matter, the fact, right, that when you have new brothers, new sisters, right, that hear this word, okay, have faith, and start pretty much repenting and converting, you don't want to beat them over the head with the law, man. Okay, you don't want to tell them this is exactly what you need to do, this, and lay out all 613 laws and tell them you need to start doing all of them today, right? Because ultimately, it's impossible, right? It's impossible. It's very difficult. Okay, in order to keep the law pretty much on point, it's a process. Okay, and that would pretty much make them, what's the word? It would deter them, right? They would be like, nah, I ain't trying to do all that because they're still in the world, right? And this point I'm bringing up was something that actually came up, right, with Paul, okay, with Peter, okay, and with pretty much the council, right, the men back then, okay, because that's what the Pharisees wanted to do, right? I think it was yeah, that's what the Pharisees wanted to do is they wanted to beat the law over the head of the so-called Gentiles, right, which were Israelites that were scattered in these Gentile nations, right, that were pretty much acting like the Gentiles. Okay, that's the Gentiles he's talking about, right? But these Israelites, they were completely gone, right, eating pork, committing adultery, okay, doing all these things, right? And here it is, right? They just pretty much heard the gospel, and the Pharisees are telling them, yup, they have to get circumcised. They have to do this. They have to do this. They have to do this. Right? And they started going down the list. And Peter pretty much is all like, hey, right, you're putting a yoke upon them. Right? It's difficult. Right? Neither our fathers nor we were able to bear. So the point is that there's a certain way of doing this. Right? And before I start even going into this, let's read the story or the history. This is Acts chapter 15 and verse 1. It says, "And certain men which came down from Judea taught the brethren and said, Except ye be circumcised after the manner of Moses, ye cannot be saved." And that's not true. Okay, that's not true at all. Right? For example, right now, ultimately, right, if you're not circumcised, that's not gonna fuck up your salvation, right? Because salvation boils down to faith first and foremost, right? Faith. Okay, now getting circumcised, there's nothing wrong with it, right? If the Spirit is on you to go and get circumcised, go ahead and do it, right? That will be part of your work, showing that you actually have faith. Go ahead and do it. Nothing wrong with that, right? But your salvation, okay, is not going to be fully based on the law. Okay, it's primarily on faith, right? When we're cast into those prisons, okay, for just proclaiming this gospel, we're not going to be able to have our fringes on. We're not going to be able to keep the law in a cell 100%, right? Which shows you that it's all about faith. Now, just because faith is going to be our salvation doesn't mean we take away the law. Okay, a lot of people they forget that, right? Let's hit that concept first before we go through it, because just because we're going to be saved through faith, it doesn't mean we stop following the law, statutes, and commandments. So this is Romans chapter 3 and verse um 30. It says, "Seeing it is one God which shall justify the circumcision by faith and uncircumcision through faith, do we then make void the law through faith? God forbid. Yea, we establish the law." Right? So we establish it. Right? We tell people to follow it because that is the definition of righteousness, is to follow the law, statutes, and commandments of the Heavenly Father. Okay, that's what righteousness is. Okay, so, hey, and Paul said concerning the law, he's a Pharisee. Right? He kept the laws better than anybody he knew. Right? And that's what he was pretty much showing the people. Right? One more time, it says, "Seeing it is one God which shall justify the circumcision by faith and uncircumcision through faith, do we then make void the law through faith? God forbid. Yea, we establish the law." Right? You pretty much put that shit down, man. You let people know what it is. Okay, how you're supposed to be living. Okay, and one thing about that too is that if you're talking about keeping the laws, you also have to be keeping the laws, man. You can't be a hypocrite, right? You can't be a hypocrite, right? That's why Yahweh Shai, he was cursing out the Pharisees because a lot of them were hypocrites, right? This is Matthew chapter 23 and verse 3. It says, "All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do, but do not ye after their works, for they say and do not." Right? They were talking about do this law and this law and this law, right? But a lot of those Pharisees weren't doing nothing. Okay? It says, for they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne. Right? Going into the law, man. It's not easy to keep all the laws. Right? It's difficult. Okay, the reason we we went into captivity is because we kept breaking those laws, man. We were a rebellious, hard-headed, stiff-necked people. It says, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. Right? They don't get down. Right? They say do this and they don't do it. Okay, and if you go down, he says the same thing pretty much. Goes into how they strain at a net. Let's find that. This is Matthew chapter 23, and verse 24 says, ye blind guides, which strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. Right? Because these Pharisees, right, they look at what the people are doing, right? They look at what the people are doing and be like, oh, you're not doing this specifically. You're forgetting this law and this law and this law. Right? Overlooking the fact that they're trying. Overlooking the fact of all their other works. Right? They're always trying to pinpoint something. Okay, when they look at their own selves, right, a lot of the times they weren't even following it. Right? So that's who was calling them hypocrites. Right? He was calling them vipers and all these words. Okay? So going back to Acts chapter 15, now let's read this. It says, and certain men which came down from Judea taught the brethren and said, except ye be circumcised after the manner of Moses, ye cannot be saved. When therefore Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and disputation with them, they determined that Paul and Barnabas and certain other of men should go up to Jerusalem unto the apostles and elders about this question. And being brought on their way by the church, they passed through Phoenix and Samaria, declaring the conversion of the Gentiles, and they caused great joy unto all the brethren. And when they were come to Jerusalem, they were received of the church and of the apostles and elders, and they declared all things that God had done with them. But there rose up a certain of the sect of the Pharisees which believed, saying that it was needful to circumcise them, and to command them to keep the law of Moses. And the apostles and elders came together to consider the matter. And when there had been much disputing, Peter rose up and said unto them, men and brethren, ye know how that a good while ago God made choice among us that the Gentiles by my mouth should hear the word of the gospel and believe. And God which knoweth the heart to bear them witness, giving them the Holy Ghost, even as he did unto us, and put no difference between us and them, purifying their hearts by faith. Now therefore why tempt ye God to put a yoke upon the neck of the disciples, which neither our fathers nor we were able to bear? Right, and that's the point, is that, hey, putting the entire law upon them, that's a yoke, man. Okay, you're going to ultimately suffocate them. It's difficult being in the world. Right, if I was in the world, man. Right, if I remember when I was in the world, and they told me, first day, believe, yep, you have to drop this and this and this and this and this. Right, I'd be in my head like, damn, I don't know if I can do that today. Right, because it's a progress. Right, the more you grow spiritually, the more laws you keep. Right, the more the Spirit moves you to be more righteous. Okay, for example, and every single brother has different stumbling blocks. Right, has temptations. Right, might have a brother that was heavy into smoking weed. Okay, and they might have told him, hey, the first day you need to stop that, and he could have dropped it right there. Right, but another brother, you could have told him the same thing, and that might have been a heavier demon upon him that it took him a while. Right, it took him a while. And there's other things like pork. Right, I put off pork in a heartbeat, man. As soon as they told me you're not supposed to be eating pork, the next day I was done with it. Right, but you can't be out here telling people, oh, go get circumcised. Right, and imagine they're uncircumcised, and go tell them, yeah, you gotta go get circumcised tomorrow. Right, or else you're not gonna get saved. Right, that sounds like madness. It sounds like madness. You're just gonna pretty much make them. You're gonna what's the word? You're gonna deter them, right? Make them go away. Okay, and this thing is all about fishing, man. You gotta throw that bait in perfectly, right? Fishing is a skill. Okay, so when you're talking to people, right, you're telling them, yup, hey, these are the laws, these are what righteousness is, but hey, you gotta say this, right? You do it to the best of your ability. Okay, you have to slowly get to that point, right? But take your time, right? Work on it, but take your time. Okay, and ultimately, when we go into Judges chapter 5 and verse 11, that's what it talks about. Going into rehearsing the righteous acts, right? Because we can't perfect it. And this is Judges chapter 5 and verse 11. It says, they that are delivered from the noise of archers in the places of drawing water, there shall they rehearse the righteous acts of Yahweh, even the righteous acts toward the inhabitants of his villages in Israel, and then shall the people of Yahweh go down to the gates. Okay, and that's going into here in America, Babylon the Great, right? Because here is going to be the main salvation deliverance, right? And when it's talking about the noise of the archers, hey, that's going into those missiles, right? Let's prove that by going to Jeremiah chapter 50. You go to Jeremiah chapter 50. noise of the archers. Right, this is Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 9. It says, "For lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon," talking about America, "an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man, and none shall return in vain." Right, and that's talking about how all these countries, right, are going to get together and shoot arrows, right, aka missiles, upon America and destroy this place utterly. Okay, America is going to be a wasteland. So when we go back to the noise of archers, that's what it's talking about. This is the place where that deliverance is going to happen. Right? And it says that here, we're going to rehearse the righteous acts of the Lord. Right? Rehearse them because we can't do it perfect. Okay, you can't get the law 100% here in America. Right? Hey, you talk about, hey, I don't eat pork, but even you be try the pork is in everything. Right? In everything. Hey, for example, supplements. Right? If you're taking supplements, a lot of these wicked ass people, right, or just wicked companies, they be selling those supplements in capsules made out of gelatin, which gelatin comes from pork. So there it is, not knowing you're eating pork, right? So if you didn't know that, from now on, go and get vegetarian capsules, and that's how you avoid that mess. Okay, so hey, whenever you try, you can't keep the law here. That's the point, right? We rehearse it. You do it to the best of your ability, right? So that's what you got to tell newcomers is, hey, this is what we're supposed to do. This is the entire law, but do it to the best of your ability. Okay, the best you can. Okay, and slowly but surely, you're gonna do more and more and more. Okay, and that's exactly what the apostles did. Right? If you jump down to verse 20, it says, "But that we write unto them that they abstain from pollutions of idols, and from fornication, and from things strangled, and from blood. For Moses of old time hath in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day." Right? So they told them some basic things. Right? Abstain from these idols. Right? Abstain from fornication, from things strangled, and from blood. Right? A couple things. Right? Pretty much like a starting. Okay, start here, and slowly but surely you'll get built up. Okay, that's the same way we're supposed to be doing things. Right? You tell a brother, hey, stop eating pork, shrimp, crab, lobster, man. These things are sins. Okay, and from there you start building and building and building. Okay, and there's a lot of stumbling blocks for brothers, man. Okay, it comes from all types of manners of walk. Right, it's like it. Brothers come from all manners walks of life. I can't even say that. Okay, for one brother, hey, the lining up the beard and lining up the forehead, that might be difficult. Right, he might be a barber and that might be his profession, but hey, you can't be according to the law. Hey, that's a sin. Right, you can't be out here lining people up, getting lineups on your head. That's a sin. Right, so everybody has their own tests and tribulations, their own stumbling blocks, and everybody's gonna move, okay, and grow differently. So we'll get a couple more scriptures. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 1. It says, "And I, brethren, could not speak unto you as unto spiritual, but as unto carnal, even as unto babes in Hamashiach." And that's the point, is that once you come to this truth, pretty much you're a baby, right? You don't know anything. You're pretty much restarting your whole way of thinking, right, of living. You're a baby, so you have to be treated as one. It says, "I have fed you with milk and not with meat. For hitherto you were not able to bear it, neither yet now are ye able." Right, and when he's going into, he fed them with milk, going into the basic things, right, the basic things of the scriptures. Okay, that's the way you have to give unto babies is milk. You can't give them meat, or else they're gonna choke. Right, so when a brother comes in, you feed him with milk. Right, you tell him, oh, you're an Israelite, you're supposed to be keeping the law, statutes, and commandments to the best of your ability. Don't eat pork, right, and you get on the basics, man. Okay, you feed him the basics. Right, you can't just jump at him and start breaking down, Second Ezra, the 11th chapter, right, going into the Caesars. He's not gonna get that, right? That's that meat, okay, the heavy prophecy. He's not gonna get it off the rip. You have to start with milk, and then you get to have your substance, okay? And everybody grows differently. I remember when I first came into truth, hey, I was hooked, man. I was hooked on the prophecies. Okay, I was hooked on the prophecies, and personally, I tried jumping. I was gonna sound crazy what I just said. I started jumping to just trying to just get those deep understandings, that meat, and I just didn't understand it, man. I'd try, right? I'd watch the brothers break it down, but I wasn't able to grasp it, and that was until a time of just learning, right? Going back to the basics, going over and over again. Where those same videos I'd watch, now I watch them, I'd be like, oh, now this all makes sense. Now I see how it connects, right? Because I've grown to a certain point where I'm fed, I'm growing. I'm able to digest these pretty much concepts, prophecies, dark sayings, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and that takes time. So pretty much the point. I was all over the place, but the point is that there's a way of teaching, man. There's a way of teaching, and you cannot beat new brothers that come into this truth, right? Gospel. We can't beat them on the head with the law, right? Baby steps, baby steps. So hopefully this is edifying. With that, and give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai Ba'Shem, Rakak Wadash, and double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Shalom to your elect. Shalom.